We just had a video glitch, so we want to make sure this is being videotaped. Oral communications from the public. Members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes, longer with the permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in a discussion on topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the committee? Okay. Next item is the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains no donations tonight. The consent agenda also includes out-of-state or overnight trip permission approvals for Newbury Elementary, 6th grade, to go to the ecology school for a week in October. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? New business. Would any members like to raise additional items for inclusion on a future agenda?
I'd just like to hear from the administration on what would be required to move to district-owned busing rather than heading out for district contract.
We would be happy to share information with you on that.
The next item is the DCC meeting update. The last DCC meeting was March 28th in Salisbury, and it was well attended. We talked through the Triton final budget and had a lengthy conversation about the alternative assessment working group, which the town representatives agreed should begin meeting again to reconsider options, and about the facilities subcommittee's approach to evaluating the Byfield campus. Attendees raised conflict concerns with the April DCC meeting date, so that meeting has been canceled. And you're all set? Oh, perfect. Okay, now we will go to the Student of the Month, and I'll hand that over to Erin.
The Student of the Month is one of the most special things that we have on the agenda. The Student of the Month program was established in 2019 by the school committee to honor exemplary students. Nominations are collected throughout the year from staff members at all 5 schools. Nominations are made through 5 categories: service to fellow students, teachers, or community, dedication, determination, and persistence in the face of obstacles, attitude towards learning, determination, high achievement in academics, athletics, or performing arts, significant improvement in academics, athletics, or performing arts. Selections are made by the chair of the school committee, the superintendent, and 1 member of the policy and advocacy subcommittee. This month's Student of the Month is Vern Oliveira, nominated by Brittany Williams. Congratulations, Vern. Could you come up with Miss Yando so that she can talk a little bit about why you were nominated?
Yeah, screen. You hear me? Okay. All right. So we at Newbury Elementary School want to take this opportunity to recognize the outstanding citizenship of one of our first graders. And Mrs. Williams wrote this, so if I start crying, we can blame her, but I'm going to try to get through it. Vern Oliveira truly demonstrates the traits of a Triton Student of the Month. He is a good friend to all. But most specifically, he looks out for a special friend who's in our HELPS program. Vern's friend Willie is in a wheelchair and communicates with a communication device. Vern is always right by Willie's side. He helps Willie's assistant and communicates with Willie both through typical first grade silliness and play and through Willie's device. It is unusual and heartwarming to see the way Vern brings joy to Willie and to everyone around him. Thank you, Mrs. Williams, for your nomination, and congratulations to Vern on achieving this wonderful honor. This is Willie, and this is Vern.
That's right. Took the invitation seriously. I love it. Figured we'd fill the meeting up for you guys.
The next item is the wellness program update. I'd like to welcome Matt Jackling, the District Wellness Coordinator, to provide an update. I know, sorry, Matt, that you have to follow that.
All right, good evening. Tough act to follow, so I'll try and do my best. So we're just going to get into, when I first had this position, part of what we were looking to do was kind of create a assessment of where we stand K through 12 in terms of our wellness programming. As you know, wellness work has kind of blossomed over the last 5 to 10 years, especially post-COVID, in terms of providing kids with support throughout the building and support throughout the district. As we know that's when they flourish the most as learners. So we are looking at just kind of the first level of our assessment, kind of understanding what we do as a school, what structures we put in place, what partnerships we can develop, and what our curriculum looks like for wellness throughout. With the ultimate goal being just to say, here's where we are, and let's move forward. Let's figure out ways to grow, figure out the path that we want to take. So I will be going into 3 main categories. Wellness curriculum review, which is basically what we're learning in classrooms, K through 12. Supplemental programming, which are wellness themes that we do through clubs or through other entities that exist within the school, but not necessarily a formal class. And then also community partnerships that we currently have. And then also looking to add recommendations to each of these as a way that we can talk about how to move forward. Specifically, the curriculum, as we're getting to first, the new Massachusetts Comprehensive Health and Physical Education standards came out right before the school year started. Wonderful timing. And with that, we wanted to take a look. These standards were extremely outdated. They were the last time they were formally sent out was 1999. So we are working we're catching up a lot of ground here. With that, we want to take a look at what we're doing in light of those standards. Now, I think initially we had this grand idea to kind of work through the hundreds of standards and see where we are, but talking to colleagues who do my position in other districts and working with kind of a conglomerate group that we work with, we found that the idea is to really focus on a few key areas, start there, and as the school year goes and as the frameworks get a little more fleshed out and we actually see what these standards look like in classrooms, we can start to really kind of fine-tune how we approach those and how these get represented in our curriculum. So with these frameworks, as I said, they're new, so we're slowly working through them. No school should have 100%. That would be, right, immaculate. That would be probably unrealistic. So what we're trying to understand is where are the gaps, right? Where are we missing? And most importantly, is there a plan to address the things that we're missing moving forward? All right. So we're going to start elementary, and we'll just work our way up, and we'll just give a brief summary of what's going on. So at the elementary level, so physical education happens in pre-K up through 6. So I probably should have rearranged my slide a little differently. The second bullet down, PE meets 1 time per week for 40 minutes. Pre-K is for 30 minutes. That 10-minute difference matters, especially for people who are teaching pre-K. It's a challenge. But with that, they're getting consistent PE programming throughout the week. Additionally, we had a social emotional learning program. This program ended in the fall of 2023. Students at one of the 3 elementary schools experienced programming this year, but the budget did not support that position moving forward. So that SEL program is kind of in pause for right now. And then health education. Health education happens in small, isolated lessons in grades 4 through 6. We have a standard-aligned curriculum that we use, which is the Botfin Life Skills. It's taught in 8 kind of 1-lesson increments through the specials. So each special teacher kind of provides 1 or 2 of those lessons as the students move through that. And these lessons cover decision-making, communication, social skills, assertiveness, addiction prevention, technology, and media literacy. So areas of growth. The Botman Life Skills curriculum is standard-based, so we like that. That aligns with kind of where things have come, where these new standards exist. But the problem with the content is how they're structured. We're asking, different teachers to have to talk to content that's not necessarily in their strength. And secondly, there's so much value to having a consistent voice who's teaching this curriculum throughout, because that teacher is developing their lesson. They're learning how to do it better. They're finding what's more engaging. And then secondly, they're a resource for those students who have further questions, who need follow-up. So doing these kind of isolated lessons throughout it's a step. It's where we're at. But the goal ultimately would be to build a more congruent growth path for how that lesson can progress, because the sequencing matters, right? And not only that, we're also skill building, and the scaffolding that we can put in really gets kind of tampered down with this model. Additionally, health education is lacking in grades K through 3, where standards surrounding physical health and hygiene, personal safety, nutrition, and SEL do exist, but we are currently not doing these. Now, some of these things show up in a traditional classroom just because that teacher is on the ball, right? And that's great, but to formalize that, I think, is the direction that we ultimately want to move in. All right. And then lastly, PE time. These recommendations are like pie in the sky, best case scenario. So PE time is limited to 40 minutes per week. The recommended level for this age level is 150 minutes per week. So recommendations, and again, these recommendations are just based on where we're at right now. Whether these recommendations, what the path goes from here is going to be discussions above me, but most importantly, hopefully, that we can have together as a way to figure out best path forward. All right. An elementary health education class, especially in light of losing the SEL teacher, seems like there's a very large gap in some of the competencies that we expect our students to have as we go through here. SEL instruction is important to helping our students develop skills necessary to address their own mental health, but also to promote resiliency, empathy, and connection within a school community, all which improve engagement and increase learning opportunities. All right? The need shines even brighter again without the lack of this formal education program. And always, I think we're always going to ask for increased PE time, mostly specifically for this level, because that energy expenditure is necessary. Those kids, they have to have an outlet, and recess takes place, which is great, but PE really leverages that activity and that wanting to be active and turns it into learning. And I'm not saying that it can't happen at recess, but it doesn't happen as formally as what it does during a PE class. So increasing that time not only opens up more learning opportunities. It also has a huge impact on students when they go back to class. If they are more active, they get, tends to be reflective in their behavior, right? Their executive function and memory has all been proven to be improved after being active for a certain amount of time. Okay. As we look at the middle school has a different model. The wellness class meets every day for 1 quarter for grade 7 only, and 1 quarter is roughly 45 days. Topics in this class is really well formatted to kind of cover what students are going through at this age. Goal setting, decision making, mindfulness, growth mindset, social media, media literacy, healthy relationships, addiction prevention, sex education and puberty, and mental health are all addressed in this class. Physical education meets every day for 1 quarter, similarly to the wellness class, whereas 1 day per cycle is attributed to health ed. So basically, out of the 6 days, 1 day is a health ed class, the other 5 days are PE class. All right? Topics include addiction, decision-making, self-image, and healthy relationships, but those are more like one-offs because of just the infrequency of how that class gets rotated through. There are also 2 grade 8 PE electives, which are team sports and strength and conditioning, which does the same model, meets every day for 1 quarter. Biggest issue with this is that short window of PE time that students are allotted is problematic, because due to the schedule, some students may have PE in like the fall of 7th grade, and just based on how their class list came up, they're not having it till spring of 8th grade, right? So we're talking almost a year and a half of class where they're not getting those benefits that PE has. We talked about just executive functioning and behavior, how that can impact that, but it's also, when we think about how we want people to be active, we want it to be routine-based. We want it to be a consistent thing. We don't want it to have it be really condensed during one section of their life and then not do it again for a year. And when we think about how we're training these students to be adults, when we think about our own health, our own wellness, the goal is to keep like that routine going and to make us all continually be finding those reliefs, finding those outlets for what being active provides us. So it just doesn't coincide with that model. So it's just something to consider with how we structure that. And again, recommended activity time for this age level is 225 minutes, which students do get during their quarterly time, but if you balance that out during the 3 terms that they're not having it, it isn't showing up there. So again, the recommendation here is to address the imbalance of PE time as it expands throughout the quarter, instead of outside of the quarter for the rest of the school year. All right, moving into the high school. Phys ed classes are primarily focused on physical activity and skill development, and so we have a wide variety of PE classes, which is great because one of the biggest issues we have with PE at the high school has to do with students who want to be engaged during that time. So by providing different outlets for this and not just having to be a traditional PE class, we get a lot more student engagement. So we have Intro to Adventure class, which is a class that every 9th grader has to take. In the parentheses here, it says the grade and then how many days it meets out of 7. Upper class electives, team sports, lifetime sports and activities, strength training, advanced adventure, and then partners in PE. All of those really work to provide a very diverse PE experience. So that is doing a great job of meeting different people where they're at in terms of their physical activity, in terms of their fitness level, and be able to have something for everyone. I love the fact that we make every kid take adventure class. That is a great leveling off for traditionally kids who excel at PE. They get into adventure, it throws them off a little bit. They're not used to they're used to competitive games and things like this. So it's nice to have that because we also have students who aren't really into the sport aspect of it who really thrive when we do adventure. There's a lot of team building, there's a lot of student advocacy that happens there. So it really kind of creates a level playing field for PE. Health education. So we have Intro to Health and Fitness, which is in grade 10, which is a class all 10th graders have to take. This course primarily focuses on entry-level health education combined with fundamentals of personal fitness. So it's a mix of PE and health. It does have some health content in there. And then again, there's an elective that you can take that is wellness, which is for 11th or 12th graders, and that's 3 out of 7. If we're talking about gaps, though, again, 7th grade is the last time that they're having a formal health class, which is that wellness class, and now in 10th grade is their next one. That's a big jump, and if you have 7th, 8th, 9th graders, they need some support when it comes to understanding their own health and, most importantly, their wellness, their mental health. And so it's sparsed out pretty thin, so kids really kind of need more access points to that. All right, areas of growth for this. Outside of the grade 10 offering, there's very limited health education that occurs within the department. Developing curriculum updates and electives that reflect the current standards in regards to the following should be a priority. Mental health, which does get addressed in other ways, but it's really important to offer really focused learning opportunities. Because when I come in and do a one lesson on mental health, someone's absent, right? Something's happening to that kid that day and they're not really tuned in, or maybe they're not able to really hear that because of what's going on in their lives. So without having consistent messaging throughout, there's a lot of missing in terms of student retention. So mental health, healthy relationships, self-advocacy, sexual health and reproduction, social media, and addiction all need to find bigger audiences within the school. And I think we're working in that in certain ways in some of our supplemental programming. But again, that comes down to that it's a very not direct way to reach all students. So if we're lucky, we're hitting a certain amount, but we're definitely not covering all students. So some other areas of growth. The current model for lifelong fitness is impacted by the facilities that we have. If you notice, if you come into the gym area directly to the right in that lobby, there's some cardio equipment there, which glad we have it. The issue is that that's not a big enough space for a class, and secondly, that's not a big enough space for if a class is doing an activity and somebody's utilizing that really puts that teacher in a tough space because they need to monitor, they need to educate, right? They need to provide instruction, and it's really hard to be in those two places at once, especially with our fitness center being even further back behind the gym area. So some of our students who, they have the opportunity to use that cardio equipment as a way to, if we're doing volleyball isn't their unit, they're asking for something that better fits with their own physical activity level, we'll provide them some cardio equipment. Kid who gets hurt can't be, we put them on the bike for a little while, just so they're doing something to remain active. That huge gap, though, becomes problematic just in terms of monitoring students and again, student safety. And then lastly, grade 12 students have the opportunity to utilize a waiver to receive PE credit for participation in varsity athletics. This is problematic for a lot of reasons, mostly due to it does not provide an equitable opportunity for all students. Because of user fees, not every student can participate in athletics. And so there creates some big canyon there between students who have access to that waiver and students who don't. And then secondly, there's a lot of gray area regarding this around the state, but because there's a precedence here of because I'm paying a user fee, that equates to academic credit. And that's a slippery slope as well. Because my user fee is going towards to obtain that credit. Even though we're giving a waiver, this is a waiver that we endorse, it's something that we see students now who are trying to manipulate this model. Traditionally, students would take 2 PEs their junior year and 1 their senior. They'd get the waiver for the 1. Now we're having students take 1 PE in the junior year, knowing that they can waive out a 2 in the senior year. So it's just becoming problematic. All right, so wellness curriculum, just overall recommendations. For the high school, we need to develop more health education electives for upperclassmen. My personal history as a health teacher, I taught middle school, I've taught 9th grade, 10th grade, and 12th grade. There is a huge gap between what they're willing to talk about in 10th grade and what they're willing to talk about in 12th grade. I also think some of the topics we cover seem very distant, seem very separated from where they're at as 10th graders, whereas as seniors, they know this is their life, these are the challenges they're going to be facing in the near future. So there tends to be a lot more engagement and retention in those upperclassmen. So providing some more electives for them. Again, identify and curate spaces that are conducive to lifelong fitness. So figuring out a way to kind of expand or create a way where students can access cardio within the weight training and resistance training area, which is a buildings concern. But that's ultimately what I think we should be striving for. And the senior waiver, again, we talked about why it's kind of problematic, but I'm also thinking about students who are maybe at their most stressed as seniors, not getting those daily benefits of being active throughout the school day. I think that really impacts their overall wellness, and secondly, how they view wellness in the long term. I think most people have found as they're adults that they need to do something for themselves, something that you get up, you're walking, you're doing something that's helping your body, and I think by us not providing that for them or forcing kids into that, we do struggle with learning that life lesson and figuring out how they can start to be like their active adult version of themselves. All right, now supplemental programming, it's defined as programs that exist outside of a specific class or classroom. They're aimed to provide wellness programming for a specific subset of students. Now, we offer the following programs that work outside of these classrooms that intend to promote wellness within our school community. First of all, we have we have the food pantry that takes place at each building, which is supported by the First Parish of Newbury Food Pantry, which provides consistent access to students in need at all buildings within the district. We provide the Polished Dental program, which has dentists who come into the building for students who sign up to get dental care, which is a great program. We have the ESPERT program, which we'll get a little bit more into. This is a student health screening that addresses substance use and abuse and data collection, and it channels students who kind of qualify for more support into a program that can help better support them. This program also provides so we're working at addiction cessation programs that we're starting to explore to figure out how we can bring those in. This is a partnership that we have through C4 Innovations in conjunction with Mass General and Harvard Medical School. C4 has created a few programs that they use at other schools that deal with substance abuse programs, and then also dealing with chronic absenteeism and some other issues that they face. So they're a good resource for us to start to explore to figure out how we can better use what they do. We have the Wellness Day program. I'll talk more about that momentarily. We also have our School Wellness Committee, which now that you have given the rubber stamp of approval on the new wellness policy in the fall, we're now exploring how to advocate what that policy is and also get that information out to schools so that we are working in compliance with it. And that is a group that's meeting, hopefully, we're meeting quarterly, but also trying to meet more consistently in each building as a smaller group to disseminate information and also help work to build a better wellness community within the district. We also have a guidance seminar series. This is a series through our guidance department at the high school where students are getting mental health support, where they're getting instruction about some of these topics that haven't really been focused on during our other health classes. And it provides opportunities for other people to come in. I've taught a few of them, and it's a great way for students to get mental health, students to get future planning, decision-making, and also deal with stress reduction. So this all programming that, again, you're not in a formal class, but it is providing some support throughout. So I'm going to talk briefly about Wellness Day. Wellness Day was, give me one second here, sorry. So just, Wellness Day is a program where we did it at the high school last year. The purpose of Wellness Day is to increase awareness and decrease the stigma associated with mental health struggles and seeking help. It's also to increase self-care and wellness skills for students and staff is a big part of this equation. And it's also to take a break from our usual routine to care for ourselves, and it also promotes and practices the importance of wellness and balance in our lives, both as students and adults. At some point, if you want to click through this is attached to the slides that we shared. We have the list of available workshops. All of these workshops were created by high school staff. So what Wellness Day does is it asks for students to come in and pre-register for workshops that are created by our high school staff that are not in alignment with curriculum. These are things that our staff members think students need more of within the school day, whether it's mental health relaxation, whether it's being active in different ways. Well, the ultimate goal of this is to have students, and staff, have days where stress levels are lower, it's different than a traditional classroom environment, and to create connections between our adults and students and peer-to-peer that they don't normally get. There's so many barriers for students when they come into a classroom that we don't see right away, whether it's they're not comfortable with the content. It could be something social where there's a peer in there that is, their best friend, their most supportive person, or it could be their mortal enemy. We don't know, and so there's so many things that go into how classrooms thrive. And so part of what we want to do is refresh that every once in a while by going a little bit different, throwing kids and staff a curveball and asking them to kind of be here in the building without having the normal routine, without having the normal stress, because we see how that impacts students. So we did it this day. Again, the workshops that were in here attached. We did do some data collection on this, so I want to get into that real quickly. So this first slide is how would you rate your stress level on a typical school day, with 5 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. Most students are living at 4. That's 49.4%. On the day that we did Wellness Day, most students, we had 60.9% at 1, claiming that they had the least amount of stress. And if you look, the other numbers for 3, 4, and 5 too are also very minimal. Did Wellness Day provide you with an opportunity to decrease your school-related stress? 90.8% of students said yes. Is there a person, peer or adult, that you made a new connection with during your Wellness Day experience? 67.8% of our students said yes. So we're not just going through different experiences, we're creating new connections, and we know that those connections play a big role in how students view their success. We know that when you feel supported, you feel like you can accomplish more, you are more resilient. And so just by having more connection to the adults and to your peers is going to help you, hopefully, feel a little bit more like a sturdier version of you while you're here. Should Wellness Day or similar activities continue to take place? 98.9% of our students said yes, and then if answered yes, how frequently. We had a variety of answers here, with the number one thing being once per quarter. We had once per school year, once per semester, once every couple of weeks. I answered no, so once per quarter was the most desired student. So that's one side of it. And we also had our staff do the same survey and look at how it went through there. Sorry, faculty feedback. How would you rate your stress level on a typical school day? So this is for staff, again, 5 being the highest. Our largest numbers here were 3 and 4. During Wellness Day, big shift again, where staff was getting some of the same mental health benefits as our students. I will say, though, just to acknowledge both sides of this coin, for some students, a day of that routine is what kind of gets them through the day. So to have a day that's different can increase those stress levels. Same with our faculty. This isn't an age thing, this is a people thing, right? And so I think for some people, this was a big ask. And so again, I've mentioned it many times, I'm extremely grateful for our staff for allowing this program to happen, because without them, this doesn't work. And secondly, for just being open to it, this puts staff in a very tough position, one, for a program that they're not sure about, they've never done before, and secondly, it diverts so radically from what the traditional school day looks like. It was a huge ask, and they really responded well. You can tell by the student feedback. Similarly, what was their stress? Did it decrease your school-related stress? 72% said yes of our faculty. Is there a person or colleague or student that they made a connection with? This number is probably the number that's most encouraging to me, and 77% of our faculty said yes. Ultimately, again, when we're talking about connection, we feel like that's what's going to be the backbone of any good school community. And then should Wellness Day or similar activities continue to take place? 93% said yes. And again, quarterly came to be like the most consistent answer. So even though Wellness Day was just one day, it did build some positive momentum. I think ultimately, if we're talking long-term plan here, we would like to see a similar model be run at the middle school maybe next year, with using also high school supports and high school students to help promote that and start to build a little bit of connection between buildings. And then, not the same model, obviously, but similar things trickling down to the elementary with the year after, where we're starting to really build a consistent message so students can rely on something like this in a consistent way, where they know, like, hey, like, I just got to power through. Wellness Day's coming up. It's going to be a great day for me to reset, recharge my batteries, and I'll be ready for the next 3 weeks after that. So these are programs that we've started here, and I think that in the past, so I've run this program before at my previous position, there's huge growth that happens year to year. We start to get more mental health focused. We start to bring in outside people who are going to teach us more about mental health. But first is just getting people in the door and getting people open to the idea. So as we move forward with that, we'll be sure to keep you up to date with how that's going to play out, with especially what kind of support we need and moving forward. All right, so in looking at the wellness curriculum review, it is essential to develop in-service programs, so some other supplemental programming recommendations. Topics that we need to consider for this, specifically personal safety, and that's starting with our youngest, moving all the way up. There are personal safety blind spots that we have where we can really think to develop better community partnerships and bring some people in to help us really see what we need to provide with our students. Nutrition education and healthy choices, physical activity opportunities, and then social emotional learning should be things that we're looking to provide more supplemental program for all levels. All right, and then lastly is our community partnerships. So we are kind of in this interesting situation, right? Because we have 3 communities, 3 diverse communities that all have their own needs and their strengths and their weaknesses. So we need to start to understand how can we leverage that as a school, and how can we start to figure out what community partnerships we really need to dive in on and start to bring into our schools, because we know that, we know that Triton is always going to be in a position where we're not going to be able to have excess funds to throw at specific programming, and so we need to be more creative with how we're looking to address these. So in an effort to build a stronger community, we need to look at what resources we have within our 3 towns and look towards building towards some kind of common goal or common themes within this. One of the things that I'm learning most about at Triton is just trying to understand the different town dynamics and recognize, as someone who goes to the 3 different elementaries, what are the differences in their experiences? They don't have to look the same, right? And they don't have to be all the same, but what we need is our 7th graders, when they get here, we need to make sure that they have similar educational paths, so that when we're getting here, they've had the same content. They know about personal safety. They know about some of these things where now we are starting at a higher floor with where we are with these students. So a couple community partnerships that we've really kind of worked through this year. Participating in ECAB. ECAB is the Essex County Asset Builders. It's a youth coalition that promotes using a positive youth development approach to build networks within communities and across the region that help decrease risk behaviors in youth and produce a healthier community. This is a group that exists in the high school right now, but that is also looking to move down into middle as well and start to expand programming there. This community partnership has provided us with a lot of great learning opportunities. We've had a couple of field trips where we've brought students, and it's really about students trying to promote advocacy within our students for the things that they care about. And then next we have our Salisbury Youth Coalition, made up of representatives from the schools, police, local businesses, youth serving organizations, local government, healthcare, parent caregivers, and young people. The goal of this coalition is to provide support, advocate for, and empower Salisbury youth and their families. We've had some programming in here where we've talked to specifically Salisbury-specific students, and we've had this youth coalition work with them to try and identify like a needs assessment for the young people of Salisbury. Because if we're the adults trying to figure it out, I feel like we're going off of our own bias and our own experiences, whereas now we're bringing the kids in there and they're educating us on what we need to do. So this work has already been rewarding with trying to create different partnerships within the town of Salisbury, and it's going to actually show up in some of the stuff that we're trying to do next year here. Within that, recommendations here. To enhance our wellness offerings, we need to connect better with local fire and police. That's the first priority, especially when we get into personal safety. That needs to be something where we really explore what we can provide access for our students to those entities so that now we're starting to develop more positive relationships and also have consistent language that's going to be used, as we said, across all three buildings. Local businesses that share common goals, so like promoting healthy choices, development and application of wellness-related life skills and advocacy, and then partnership and educational collaboration with local nonprofits. So we already have some of these going. As we said, ECAB, the Salisbury Youth Coalition. We also have Girls Inc. at Seacoast and the Pettingill House, where we're starting to really build some relationships there about how to better serve not just all students, but our students at risk. So lastly, just as kind of a positive to end on, I just wanted to say that this experience has been really eye-opening for me coming into a new district, especially a new district that's serving 3 communities. It's just challenging in its own unique way, but I've also found that there's so many people who are here with the right intention and working in public schools for a long time. That's the majority, but that's not always the case. And so it's great to have kind of that natural groundswell of support that exists. But as we move forward, these are the groups that we're going to really have to leverage to help build that supplemental programming and those community partnerships. We also recently had some good things happen. We had, I think we mentioned before, regarding the SBIRT program. The SBIRT program is a screening that all students in the all 10th grade students have to go through. We received a grant this fall that works with MGH and Harvard Medical, where we get a 0.5 personal wellness coach. This is someone who's been in the building now. She's been doing the screening. We're also building up other programming that she's going to be a part of. So this is really a great resource for Triton, and it's really started to take off in terms of how we can see that flourishing, especially looking into next year and some of the bigger swings we're trying to take regarding health and wellness. Additionally, we have a grant from the MIIA, which is aimed at supplementing staff wellness. So that's been a good entity to use for paying for professional development, some wellness initiatives in-house that are a little smaller, such as like rising desks, some equipment that we can use to better promote faculty wellness. And then lastly, the school, and I just want to make sure I read this correctly, so apologies. So recognized, but the School Wellness Committee was recognized by the John C. Stalker Institute as a Massachusetts School Wellness Champion for their participation in the Massachusetts School Wellness Coaching Program. This is how we got to our wellness policy. Sarah Littman did a lot of work on promoting that and then following through with how that is how that wellness policy was shaped, executed, and now how are we implementing it. And so the John C. Stalker Institute, which provides this training, and is now recognizing Triton for that work. So all good news. So for me, that's where we're at right now. Again, it's not the end story on anything. I think it's just kind of trying to take the temperature of where we stand with a lot of this programming and trying to figure out our best paths forward and looking at some of these areas of need and recognizing, all right, this is something to tackle at this moment, or maybe this one is something that can come off of growth in other ways. So I hope that by sharing this information, we're just kind of giving everyone in school committee a heads up about where we stand and where we hope to go in the future. I'm open for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Matt. Does anybody have any questions?
Just out of curiosity, about how many seniors take advantage of that PE waiver?
The number was small. The number was small, but it's been growing. From the feedback that I've gotten from our faculty, it started off a couple of years ago with being a small handful, and now it's in double digits. But talking to juniors who are going up as seniors, I think word has gotten out about the strategy involved.
So coupling off of that, as a parent of a sophomore who's looking forward to being able to waive 2 semesters of high school of senior year to be able to take AP and electives that he has not been able to get into beforehand, I see the value to being able to look forward to that as a senior. He's a 2-sport varsity athlete. Two-sport athlete, not on varsity for everything, but he has been plotting out his next 2 years trying to make sure that he can take some AP courses as well as being able to take some electives that he hasn't been able to get into his schedule. I was just wondering how much that would affect students that may potentially plotting out like that, and if the implementation is going to be in the foreseeable future.
So I don't think it's going to be in the foreseeable future. This is kind of a bigger conversation that I think admin and school committee probably have to agree jointly on. But I will say that, first of all, props to your son for planning, because that's a huge issue we're having with a lot of our students for looking at, didn't know it was son or daughter, for looking down the road and trying to have a plan ahead. I think what we're struggling with is students who are not leveraging it for that reason, and I think it's really hard to kind of make a blanket statement like it's bad, because there are students who are using it in the correct way, right? And then we also have students who are using it to have an additional study. And again, additional studies may be beneficial to that student for stress reduction, but part of what we're trying to really promote within our students, and this is one of the things with Wellness Day, is it's not about like avoiding the thing that's stressing you out or like bringing more work into your life. It's about figuring out better strategies to cope, how we can start to build in time management, things like that to better, because that's what the real world is. And so again, I don't see this changing anytime now. There's both sides of that coin, and I see that. And I think there are students who do use it as a positive. But I do think just in terms of practice, it's questionable. When I've had conversations with people who kind of work for MAPERD, which is the Massachusetts PE and Health, who say this is not right legally in terms of the financial aspect. But I don't think I've been looking recently, and there's no like real hard line on yes or no whether this is right. So again, it's going to come down to what's best for Triton and what's best for the community.
Can you also talk to us a little bit about, you mentioned additional electives for upperclassmen. Would that be something that you see as like a requirement to graduate, or would it be something to just offer additional courses that are available to students?
I think our hope is to provide more diverse offerings for, one, graduation requirements, not that it would have to be more, but maybe in place of, and two, there's a lot of students who really get into health-related fields who don't have a good background. So, for example, in my last school, we ran a health occupations class, first aid, CPR, giving skills about personal safety. That was really highly attended by students because that was the path they wanted to go. We ran a sports medicine course, which anatomy, physiology, again, first aid kind of plays into that. But it's more about providing more diverse offerings than making it more complicated to work through. So I think what we're looking at is looking at some of the electives that we already offer and maybe looking at attendance numbers, kind of asking ourselves some hard questions like what are students really coming out of this with, and looking at how we can diversify that to better meet students' interests. Because this is it's funny, PE and health, it's one of the things that the upperclassmen start to really see value in again. They move away from it for a stretch because nobody wants to sweat. And there's a lot of things that go into the social aspects of PE. But as they start to get towards the end of their high school careers, those classes take off because they're starting to see what's coming next, and they know they need skill sets for that. And so I think it's more about just finding better opportunities for that. Yeah.
If I could just, one first comment on the Wellness Day. The first thing I heard feedback-wise was about having enough time to eat lunch in a healthy way. So that is another aspect of that didn't mention but was well received anyway. And apart from that, I just want to thank you for your honesty in looking at some of the gaps, and I think that gives us a lot to think about in ways that we can hopefully find to support those steps. seemed you were aware early on that Desi is really talented at providing impossible tasks and putting that in front of you. But you know, that certainly gives us some areas to focus on. So thank you for not kind of sugarcoating that.
Yeah, and if there's any further conversations, questions, feel free to reach out. My hope is to be a resource and a conduit between this group and our school community.
Does anybody have anything else? Matt, I want to thank you. I mean, this is a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of information that you've given to us of what your goal is going forward for our students. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
So if I'm going to say thank you, Matt, for being here, and thank you to the committee for, right, so the position of wellness coordinator was added during COVID, using COVID funds. And so in the fiscal 25 budget, it maintains this role to have this level of, again, anything that Matt has in his presentation was about an assessment, not a proposal for changing graduation requirements. That's all part of the process we will undertake together in response, but having someone with a dedicated eye and time and energy towards looking at this is of considerable value. So thank you for including that in the budget, and thank you for being here, Matt. Yeah.
The next item is the QSM surveys. The school committee's multi-year goal is about the sense of belonging to the Triton community. Susanna, Paul Goldner, and Paul Mayette have been reviewing options for initial surveys of the various stakeholder groups with the superintendent. I'm going to turn this over so they can talk us through the agenda attachments, and then we can have a discussion about next steps. So anybody that would like to.
I'm happy to talk unless any of you want to jump in. So this has been, right, this has been a topic of discussion. It was specifically a school committee goal with regard to surveying families in the community. We've been talking internally with the leadership team about also utilizing the staff and the student surveys, and felt like it was important, if we're going to survey families and we have that data set, that we're also surveying internally with staff and internally with students. So full disclosure, we've had some early discussions. It's been a couple months now since we had them. Budget season, it fell off my radar. And so there was a discussion about implementing these in, I forget the exact date, in May, mid-ish. There was a lull in MCAS. And we thought about using that as a target date to administer them. There's still work to do. I mean, this is the first time you're seeing the draft surveys. You can see the student surveys, and I should stop by saying, so these are, it's the Quality School Measures Survey, it's UMass Amherst. There was an original consortium of 10 CPMSIE districts that you now can still find their dashboard. They have to publish their data publicly. Others have now, not part of that consortium, are utilizing this tool. It's through UMass Amherst, a lot of incredible work that's being done and developed. They had a student and staff survey just this year, are modeling and demoing for the first time a parent-guardian survey. That first time is being issued in the spring. I actually just added recently, Peter from UMass Amherst actually sent Maynard's modified example. It's fairly different than the model template that they had originally designed. So it's a work in progress with them as far as the family surveys. So the last time the Pauls and Susanna met, it was looking at May as that potential, but at that point we didn't necessarily have the model survey yet for families. So I think the goal here was to bring it to the committee to talk through a process. I think it will be challenging internally to get this survey out simply from the fact that you've got, for the student survey, for K-4, you've got an A and a B, and there's some differences there. We need to talk through as a leadership team what we believe makes sense. There's a 3 through 5, 5 through 12, and then obviously a single staff survey, and then now 2 versions of a family survey. So our kind of Yeah, so I'll leave it at that. I mean, that's different timing. The goal was to have it done this year. We would have the data back next year. It's a fairly quick turnaround, 2 to 3 weeks on the data. I think several of you had the opportunity to look at that CPMSIE, I believe is the acronym, dashboard. Extensive, incredible Qualtrics data set that we would end up having as a result of this, and having all 3 surveys done together would give us a comprehensive data set. So the alternative is surveying in the fall. There's Peter and another woman at UMass have said there's some value in some districts talking about kind of a beginning of year, end of year, pre-post assessment. They believe the ideal time is in the January, February timeframe. They think is the spot on. When we talked about that with the smaller working group, that feels like a long way away. We were meeting in February, I think was the last time we met. So it felt a year out, felt like a long time. I think ultimately that's what they would recommend as the ideal timing. It's kind of post-winter holidays before you start to get to the chaos of spring and assessments, and depending on, obviously, MCAS and others. So I'll leave it at that for the moment, and I'm certainly, I don't know if Susanna and Paul have other things to add.
So, yeah, it's been a while since we've looked at this. So some of the rationale of not moving to a full time period to survey families was because, especially when you have kids that are moving from elementary to middle school and it's your first one, like you haven't built that relationship up yet with that school. Same with going on to high school. So that was one of the concerns. If you look at, some of the questions that we went, you really need to have some kind of context to base it on, and your recall might be, oh, my experience at elementary, even though my child is now in middle school, or, so that was, and even, maybe 3rd grade into 4th grade is a big jump. So that was the major concern of having that done in the fall, and having, pushing it out a little bit further to get sort of maybe more, I would say, if it's the right word, better data in that respect, so that was the major concern there.
Does anybody have any questions?
Do you think getting an initial temperature gauge, if we did this in May, would at least set us in a direction that we have like a starting point? Or would you think that waiting until next year to put the test out there would be better, given that?
So when I think we hadn't had like a full view of what the survey was looking like at the time. So, those that are going to respond are going to respond, so I think it gives enough time, personally, to get the message out there that the survey's coming, and rather than like throwing it on you. But, folks are going to respond if they want to respond, so I don't really mind. And it's not like we have to pay for each administration. I do like so that's, and it's also not a one and done deal. Like we wait 6 months or an extra 6 months, and then, you do it consecutively. I think there's value for both, but if we had to choose, I don't know what the others felt, but I would just choose that would wait until that January, February time period and do it once and do a big rollout of it.
Yeah, I think I was initially very gung-ho about trying to do that for this year. I think looking now for attempting to include, I think because when we first talked, we were just talking about the parent.
Correct.
At that. I think if we want to spend some time fine-tuning those surveys and all of that, that does seem like a lot to do quickly, and I'm inclined to do it well rather than.
Can I add one more piece of context? As you were talking, it reminded me. So the other work that we're doing is the Portrait of a Learner, right? So we were at a workshop again we have a leadership team, small team. We have middle school and high school students working together. I'm so excited. That's tomorrow, is already Thursday, to do, it's this exercise of brainstorming what learning is and what learning isn't, and moving towards a definition of what we believe learning is. The goal is have those students join a working group from across the district, all the principals, teachers from all buildings on May 13th to use a lot of brainstorming that's been done at all of the faculties about what learning is and what isn't, and what are our real kind of North Star priorities about what we believe about learning, and to come together to draft a district-wide statement of what we believe learning should look like and what it should be, and then share that out with families for feedback, share it out with the faculty at large for feedback. Moving into the fall then, launching that more globally. And I think that it provides an opportunity to be using this as more of a tool to talk about what we're focused on in our vision of the learner. Again, it's this portrait of the, sorry to take a step back, right? So the idea of a portrait of a graduate is a high school concept. If you work in a high school, you know about the portrait of a graduate. This is taking a step back and looking at it for a K through 12 perspective. It's even more, I think, important for us as a three-town region in that a lot of families still don't see that they are part of Triton until they move into 7th grade. It still feels like Salisbury and Newbury and Rowley. So to start to build that consensus around what we want for our students and what we are going to hold ourselves to and hold ourselves accountable to prioritizing, to investing in, to focusing on, and utilizing as we're rolling that out in the spring, or I'm sorry, in the fall, that start to talk about that assessment if we're going to roll it out in January and February as part of this process, to hear from you, to expect that, and hopefully, Susanna used the words, right, whoever's going to fill it out is going to fill it out, and I believe that's genuinely true, but if we can start promoting this, saying, hey, we're going to be asking you for your opinion, we asked for your opinion on this definition, here's how we see this playing out, and then working through the fall to say, we're going to be asking you after the holidays to give us an assessment about how you think we're doing as our baseline to start our starting point. Where are our strengths? Where are our areas where we really need to grow? And what should be our first and foremost priorities if we all believe that we want to take this step towards this definition of a learner? So the portrait of a learner ends up being a very long process. It's a multi-year process to roll out all the aspects of it. But there's some exciting opportunities there to really lay out what we believe beyond a vision statement, beyond core values, and maybe those change as a result of that work. But I think it would actually help queue up, not sure what the right term is there, that assessment, that survey for everyone to say, and now we're asking for everyone's honest feedback to say, where are we short and where are we good, and continue the prioritization from there. So I wanted to mention that when we were talking earlier. Sorry about that.
Does anybody else have anything? I have a question about the learning aspect of it. Are you inviting like any alumni to come in and give any of that information of people who have left the school and wish that they had been taught or learned something?
So on the definition of a learner, like it's to date, no. Eventually, absolutely. Yeah, the broader community by the end of this year, we want to push that out and get feedback from everyone, right? We can push that out. That's not something we have to worry about. I mean, certain things, excuse me, when we put out surveys, we're a little cognizant of throwing those links on Facebook and where they can be forwarded. For this, getting feedback on something like this, we want the broader, the better. So Greg has actually, Greg Kulowick with Sarah Houghton, I always say it wrong, is really making an effort to connect with alumni. So we now have Parent Square and can create a group. So they're trying to really collect that information. So that's just started. But yes, that's another absolute feedback, not for the future, right? The vision, but to their experience in the past, for sure.
Okay. So we're going to do any surveys in January. Is that what I heard?
I heard a couple people say that. I don't know if, I don't want to speak for the will of the committee.
I agree with that too. I think at this point, we need to fine tune. We need time to do that, like Paul said, so I agree.
I just want to make sure that we're putting something in place because that's part of our goals, so that when we do updates on our goals, we know where we are. Yeah.
Instinct was to say if we wait, it pushes out a whole year, right? Because if we did it in May, June, you get that information over the summer, you can look at it and possibly make some tiny or small changes at the beginning of the year that might have a greater impact, depending on whatever comes out of it, or not. You don't know, because whoever's gonna fill it out is gonna fill it out. They might be really big concerns that will take months to kind of come together. Pushing it till January, there's no move on that. So now you've pushed it out from doing it in May, June, and having something ready to kind of look at and maybe start addressing in September in some way, either in pointed discussions, to now going to June, putting it with Portrait of a Learner makes sense, but you're missing that information, and now you get it, you do it in January, get it in February, you have to do something with that information, that takes time to roll out, and now you're not ready to start using that information until the following school year. So that's kind of where I'm struggling, because our goal was to use this information and kind of move forward, and now it's like, we're gonna put it with this other thing and make it all work together, but it does push out kind of one of our initial thoughts was we really do need to take a temperature on where parents and staff and everyone stand to kind of see. So that's my concern. I don't disagree with the reason. It's just, it was on our goal for a purpose. So I do want to kind of remember that we wanted this information so that we could start having those discussions and possibly start making some changes. Just the other side. So I get it, but
So the only thing I would say is, I don't disagree, I get that, 100%. We don't need to wait until, we should have this data, they said within 2 to 3 weeks, they would have the dashboard ready to go. So if we chose January, right, January 15th, making it up, we would have that data by very early in February, and it wouldn't be something that we would wait until the following year. It would very much, call it, for lack of a better term, low-hanging fruit, make changes right away, but then absolutely that would feed into the school improvement planning process throughout the spring, for sure. So it wouldn't be 6 months to wait. If we did it in May, early June, we'd be waiting until September. That's mostly waiting on, because the summer's happening. They would likely have it to us within 2 weeks, I believe he would have the dashboard. So, and I think, right, so there's a lot of great questions, a lot of great data. We have to be ready to see the dashboard in totality when we assess that. So we have to be ready to respond, and there will be good, bad, and the ugly on that in that data set. And so we have to be ready to start very strategically. We have to be really ready strategically to acknowledge the data and respond to it. And I don't think that's going to be a short order, right? These are comprehensive surveys.
well, that's why I'm saying it would take time. Some of those questions are, you know how you don't want to ask a question that you're not really ready for the answer for? There's a lot of questions. I don't know if anyone else looked through all of them.
Yes.
There's a lot of questions that, I mean, as a school committee, as a staff, as a student, as a parent, you may not want to face that, which is why I was saying the roll-up's long, because you have to allow parents, I don't know if parents will see the dashboard, but you have to allow staff to really take in what was said and kind of sort out their feelings, because this is as much a part of who they are as, so some of these questions are tough answers that are hard to digest, which is why I said you do it in January when they come back from break, and they're not going to be hitting the ground running. They're going to be digesting that and taking it on board too. So I just wanted, like, as far as space goes, sometimes a little space to breathe between seeing things that don't sit well or you didn't see as an issue within your community, whether it be at the high school or, you know, I just.
So when do you, so where is that space in your example?
When you do it in May and June, and it's the end of the school year, and you're kind of packing up, and you get it back, and you see it, and you can.
So we wouldn't have it to them before they leave for the summer.
Oh, so they
Yeah,
would see
no,
that right in August.
Yeah, I mean, it would
So
be.
no matter what we do, there's no digestion, it's just.
We would get the data
The
back
good, the
over
bad,
the
the
summer
ugly.
and be working on it as a leadership team for sure, but it wouldn't be data that we'd be able to roll out to faculty before they came back in September. August, right? August, oh my God, or something from
It's
Pawtucket.
August.
And then, right, so again, honest internal questions or internal conversations, is that how we want to start the year? Right, that's going to be, I'm expecting there's going to be some good raw data. And we've all kind of wrapped our heads around, yes, we're ready to hear it, we're ready to see it, we're ready to respond to it. I'm not sure that's how I want to kick off a school year, honestly, with 450 employees.
I would just say, in terms of the goals, I feel like we did meet a goal in the sense that we set out to look for a vendor or investigate different surveys. We did that, and this is what we've got, and I think we have a really good, just our analysis of everything that was given to us. I think this was such a unique tool that brings everything together in one dashboard. I think that, the haste, I'm not saying haste in a bad way, but like the haste to push it out and get it, I think it's worth waiting for to bring it back. Given the science, the sort of all the study behind it, what UMass do with it, and development, I just think that we'd miss out without doing it and, sort of taking their recommendations and taking their suggestions the way, to roll. We can certainly customize everything, but I think that timeline is just such, I think it's valuable. I think to wait to what Paul said, wait to do something in the right way than to push maybe a little bit too fast and get, either way it will be a learning curve, but I do think that taking their suggestions and having this particular tool, and we have met the goal. I can confidently say that we met that first goal. Maybe the objective of not rolling it out we didn't meet, but we have that now. We have a timeline, and that's the other, the other goal that we have met. Now we have a distinct timeline that we can put our name to,
And we already knew going into this that it was going to be a multi-year goal too. And I think the first part of the goal was to just see about surveys and who we should get to do this. So I believe that Suzanne is correct that we did at least have what we had set out to do was looking at that. And they actually found somebody quicker than I actually thought that they were going to, That one of the first couple that we saw, we immediately gravitated to them because they checked all the boxes that we were looking for at that time. So we knew that the belonging was going to be multi-yeared anyways. So, and just like all of the belonging that has been going on, the training and all that has all been at a glacial pace to make sure that we do this the right way. That's just my opinion.
And I was going to say, so we can, another point you raised, we can add questions, so we can tweak this. They'll push back on us removing too many questions. Obviously, I keep wanting to say Drake, and it's not, it's Maynard, right? If you look at that side by side with the other, it's significantly different, right? So they're treating that as a different data set. So if we decided we wanted to completely change it, they'll do it. Again, no cost, right? This is all state funded through UMass. But to keep the consistent data set so there's a comparison with other districts, they would like to keep it mostly intact, but we can add additional questions. So as we go through the process of developing in our portrait of the learner, if there's another category, another grouping, something, and we develop 5, 6, 7 questions that speak very specifically to what we've identified as what we believe about learning and about students and their learning, and we can add that, right? So that could be something we could tweak as we go over the summer and into the fall and through that process and develop the survey. And then the second thing I would say is I agree with Suzanne 100% that you've achieved the spirit of the goal. I will also remind you that you're pretty unique in that you set goals for yourself as a school committee. That's not routine for all school committees. I think a lot of school committees, their goals is just getting in the same room and acting in a consistent manner. So I don't want to discount that effort, but the fact that you're setting goals for yourselves and remaining focused is impressive as a starting point.
I would just ask that, I feel like Brian has taken the lead, which is phenomenal, but this is a school committee goal, and I feel like one of the Pauls needs to, since Susanna is on her way out, unfortunately, needs to take responsibility for sort of driving the schedule moving forward to make sure it happens, please.
I figured the new person coming in, we were just going to throw it at her.
I thought we were going to introduce the
person who's not
consulting
here.
role, the
Yeah.
the community consultant role to be part of the group.
Just like at work, anybody who's absent, we give them this, so.
If I can just say to that point, I think as we go through this, continue this process of Portrait of the Learner, it will make sense for us to be working specifically on the student and staff surveys. And I think then to be working, whether it's the Pauls or it's a different working group, specifically so that you can tweak and guide that process of what you believe that parents need to be asked, I think makes a lot of sense.
I don't know if the two Pauls want to continue. And then if anybody else would like to be added to that. If not, I'll go on it.
Doesn't need to be 3.
Okay. Okay. We can work that out.
I'm just saying it's not a subcommittee, right? So there's no need to have a quorum. In fact, I would argue you shouldn't have a quorum.
Okay, I will allow the two Pauls, and if you feel you want anybody else, or if you need somebody else, I'm willing to step in if you need to. Okay. Moving on to the district curriculum accommodation plan. We often hear about the additional supports provided to students who need them. And Dr. Anna Bate, Triton's Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, is going to walk us through the accommodation plan in place to define those supports.
Thank you. So I will walk you through this, but I don't want to take credit for all this revision. This was certainly a collaborative effort that Shannon and I started this year and then brought educators in from all across the district to help with this process. So the DCAP is a requirement, Mass General Law requirement, that we are making all efforts to meet the needs of students within a general ed classroom. I looked back and I could not find out the date of the last revision of the DCAP, but I do know it was before I started at Triton, so sometime before 2015. So definitely needed to be updated. The first thing we were noticing is that we were referencing practices and programs that we did not use any longer, and then putting this out there as a resource to help support teachers in supporting their students. So we needed to update it in terms of practices and programs. We needed to update it to be in alignment with our equity statement. So that's kind of where we started, just going through preliminary work to discuss revising. So Shannon and I started in the fall, just really working through the practices and the programs that were no longer in use. We then shared different components of the DCAP with various different groups, with our speech and language, with counselors, with special educators, with occupational therapists, and got feedback on different elements of it and made revisions based on that. And then we brought a group together with representation from all of the schools and engaged in a conversation using a tuning protocol, which is to make sure that the plan, the actual DCAP, is in line with the purpose of the plan. So got some great feedback from that group, and that group suggested we engage in another tuning protocol with the management team to look at how in tune is this plan with our equity statement. And from that work, we made further revisions to it. So what you see here is a product of multiple revisions with feedback from educators from all across the schools. I think the greatest updates include the shifts to the practices and programs that are in place at Triton. I think we have alignment now with collaborative problem solving and some of the skills that are identified within that approach. We have alignment now with our equity statement, specifically naming different subgroups that we're trying to support, or different groups of students that we're trying to support with this. And then certainly updates and formatting as well. I just want to shout out to Kayla Ricker for her work on this. Phenomenal. So I think we have a good starting place now. The plan is to, we do have a section of our mandatory training that is sent out to all staff in late August that is focused on the DCAP. We'll continue to do that, but this will be rolled out to all schools at their October faculty meetings so that everybody is engaging in the same conversation and hearing the same message at the same time. And then we will be sort of moving forward in implementation from that point. The idea is that this is really isn't just a document that goes up on our website, that goes in a pile, that looks nice. This is something that we're using. And right now, the DCAP is used inconsistently across schools. I think in some, it drives their whole student support team process. And in others, when we brought it to our new hires last year, some of them were like, what's a DCAP? So I think this is a nice opportunity for us to reset and use this as a way to make sure we're really supporting all students in the Tier 1 setting. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions? I think this is great because this way you have everybody talking the same language as well. Everybody understands exactly going into what is needed here. It was long overdue, I totally agree. And I think you guys did a great job on it. As I always say, it takes a village to do the things in the district that have to be done.
Just going to say, as an educator, this is a usable document too. It's really user-friendly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank Kayla as well. Fourth grade instrumental donation. As you may remember, there was a donation for the current school year that allowed any student in grade 4 to participate in instrumental music without paying to lease an instrument. The superintendent is going to provide an update on what is planned moving forward.
Thank you. So to confirm, as you know, fourth grade, through a donation by John Weston, fourth graders were allowed to participate in instrumental lessons and band free of charge this year. So we had waived the fee and the rentals were covered by that donation. We did see increased participation. The numbers jumped and then there was some drop off, but still the numbers are about 2.5 times what they were previously at Salisbury Elementary, and they were up about 20 to 30% at Pine Grove and Newbury consistently. I'm thankful that John has continued his interest in as a recurring donation, and I've also been working with Damon Jesperson representing ICL Auto, which is obviously Marshall and Damon are well known in Newbury for their various roles on boards and as former selectmen, but as owners of ICL Auto Group, they would like to be partnering with area groups for routine donations. So they've historically, obviously as an automotive group, programs like Whittier providing automotive tech equipment and been a lot of one-time donations. They reached out to me to see if there was something as they moved to recurring donation format through the organization. Damon himself is an artist, and so when I mentioned any of the visual and performing arts, he took interest, and so they've now together have committed to continue to fund this program. They've spoken on paper, right? They've committed for next school year. They're very much interested in making this a multi-year commitment. We're talking through now. I will bring an exact dollar figure to you. But right now, they've both committed to $10,000 each, which will should more than cover even assumed increase in the participation in fourth grade. Continuing a conversation with Damon through ICL Auto, perhaps a one-time donation or an additional recurring donation that would help offset the cost of instruments for 5th and 6th graders who want to continue. I was with Deb McKinnon today. We currently have 67 instruments that at the elementary level that need minor repairs. There's another 20 to 25 that need much more major repairs. So we're looking at the potential of some of the music teachers have past experience as repair technicians. Is there a donation of equipment, welding, you name it? I don't know what else a musician repair person needs. Obviously, it differs on the instrument. But is there an ability for them to make a one-time donation that would set us up with the ability to make those repairs internally? And we would have, in essence, 90 to 100 instruments on hand. Again, the donations would rent an instrument for families that want to participate in 4th grade free of charge. But then in 5th and 6th grade, we would encourage families to purchase an instrument that they have for the future. But if they're not able to, that would give us a pretty sizable bank of donor instruments that we'd be able to say, even though you can't afford to rent one, you do have the opportunity. We also haven't we agreed to waive the user fee for 4th grade this year. The amount of money we're actually bringing in for user fees in this program at $100 apiece, with the number of students who were qualifying, it's not a lot of money. I'll come back to you with an exact amount, but my hope would be we're not paying anything recurring out of that for salaries or stipends. So my hope would be to say we're gonna waive the user fee altogether for 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. 4th, as we did this year, it's to the tune of a few $1,000s that we'd be losing. In essence, have the possibility that 4th grade will participate completely free of charge with a rented instrument paid by the donations, and then in 5th and 6th grade there wouldn't be a user fee, and we'll encourage you to rent I keep saying rent when you all know, many of you have done this, it's a rent to own, so it's a 3 or 4 year payment plan, so that ultimately the child would own the instrument. So that would be the goal, but again, if not, we would provide an instrument, and if there was no user fee, students in 5th and 6th grade would be able to participate free of charge as well. So incredibly appreciative to the two of them. It was not where either of them first came in saying we would like to donate. It was not what they came up with, but through conversation, I think they're both are really excited about this partnership and making it a long-term commitment to see that it can hopefully continue to develop the program into the future. So I had also included this in my report, but I did want to make sure I mentioned this as a separate agenda item. And again, for you to formally accept the donation, I will come back to you. But we do want to start messaging this. So the goal is we have the middle school and high school VPA, all various disciplines, going to do concerts at the elementary schools on May 6th. I'm almost positive it's May 6th. After that, it'll be going all 3 elementaries, and so it'll be 3rd through 6th grade. After that, the goal is to start messaging all those 3rd grade families now to say, hey, here's an opportunity to be able to participate in this free of charge next year, thanks to donations. Get that messaging out, and then later in the year, get the messaging out to the current 4th grade families, who are going to be 5th, and the 5th grade families at 6th, as far as any recurring costs in the future. So just wanted to put that on your radar. I'm excited about that.
Does anybody hit?
I have 2 questions. One, do we know how many 4th grade students intend to return in 5th grade?
We do not yet. So that would be the next messaging. And part of that is, I believe, I don't know this yet, right? We haven't messaged anything. If we can say, what we need to say is the rental instrument you have needs to be turned back in. So we didn't pay 1/3 of the ownership. We paid a lower rental cost for the year. So we need to message, we need to get that back, and then we encourage you to participate and rent one. If we're able to then say, there's no user fee still next year, and if you can't afford one, we have loaners for you. So that's all part of that next messaging. So we don't know that.
Okay.
There seems to be, I think Deb would say to you, there seems to be a lot of more energy around continuing. But that's all we know at this point.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, I don't want to second guess anybody's decisions here.
You want to, second? Okay.
Second guess any decisions here, but from students who, you know, are now in some cases alumni, in some cases in our secondary schools, one of the things that I heard very strongly from them was that one of the main drivers or I guess incentives to continue in visual and performing arts as they went through elementary and then came out of elementary and went into our secondary schools was their experiences that they had at the District Arts Festival. I understand sending performing arts to the elementary schools, but I have not heard the vibrant feedback from that when it has happened in recent past years, that I heard about the District's Arts Festival. And I was just wondering if you can talk about that decision.
So, the district, so we know, I don't think there's anything still hanging here. There may be some. So the visual art teachers did do a district-wide visual arts. I don't think we called it a festival, but it was a display, right? It was an art show, district-wide art show. So this is above and beyond. This is not required of anyone, right? This was, I will say, that was born out of the visual and performing arts teachers. With the reducing numbers, it's more challenging. The district-wide arts festival has a very different feel. And so I think there is now interest in moving back towards that. It's a large undertaking, and with a big shift in staffing at the high school level specifically, I think want to work back towards that. But there have been a lot of struggles. I mean, we've talked about this extensively. Decreasing numbers overall, and it's been a hard celebration, and right, there's a lot of frustration with it. So there is absolutely an interest in moving back towards that, absolutely. But I think we need to build back up to that. Yeah.
Thank you, and I can understand that. I just, I guess I have concerns. If you want to make something really successful, right, you kind of need to make sure that you have as many assets in your favor as you can possibly have. And I would love to see them line up a little bit better to bring sort of all those things together at the same time, so that, or even just an alternative to, I understand that the concerts in the elementary school may be an easier lift, but just seeing something that's more of a draw, because I think it's the collaboration that drew a lot of people. And maybe it doesn't look like the District Arts Festival, but I don't feel like, you know, it's one of those things, it's a different thing when you're participating than it is when you're watching someone else participate.
Absolutely. Yep.
Does anybody else have anything? I think that's wonderful, those two gentlemen continuing to do this, because that will only help our music and performing arts program. Moving on to the committee reorganization planning. School committee's policies require that the committee reorganize its offices at the first meeting after the May election, and they also dictate what experience a member should have to serve in certain positions. As a reminder, the secretary has to have held elected office for at least 1 year, and the vice chair and the chair for at least 2 years. The chair also has to have served as the chair or vice chair of a public body previously, which in our cases are most often in our subcommittees, and all three positions require good communication skills. And a tradition started years ago, we have gone around the table at the meeting prior to the election and had each member state what positions they are eligible for and what positions they are willing to serve in. This gives everyone a basis to consider who they might nominate or support in each officer position before our May meeting. So I would like to start with Mr. Lees and work our way around.
You may have heard this before, but I'm not interested in an official position.
Thank you, Mr. Lees. Aaron?
I'm eligible for secretary. Based on what you just said, I don't believe vice chair. You what?
I think you're eligible for vice chair, too.
Okay,
'Cause
secretary and
it's
vice chair.
2 years of elected office, which you have.
Yep.
And good communication skills.
I hope I'm a good communicator.
I mean, I understand
sometimes.
you may want the vice chair position, but.
So Narissa's role tonight is keeping you all honest. Narissa, why don't you just go around and tell everyone what they're...
Saying. No, I don't know everyone's. That's part of the. Our policy is excellent in that it's general, but it just says elected office in public bodies. So I have no idea where all of you may have been in your past lives, but it doesn't necessarily have to have happened here.
So I will tell you, I have not held a position outside of here that would lead me to Linda's seat. Linda's seat.
So I guess that's no. Okay, sorry.
2 seconds. So are you willing to, I've got to make the grid for Linda later. So I just need to know, what are you eligible for? And are you willing to serve in those positions?
Paul, what did you say?
Paul said no and no.
I am willing to serve. However, if somebody else wants the role, I'm also willing to concede.
It's my favorite time of year. Just want to say.
Caitlin?
Because I know I'll get caught lying, I am eligible for all of it. However, I will do what's best for the committee. So I will concede where necessary and willingly concede at any point.
Mr. Goldner?
What did she say?
Believe I'm also,
It's a hard pass.
I believe I'm eligible for all three, and I am able to serve if needed.
Mr. Landers?
Well played.
I think I'm only eligible for secretary, and I don't think anyone wants me to do the notes.
Narissa?
Hang on. Secretary, and that's a no?
That's a hard no.
I was just checking. I wasn't sure if you were leaving that no to us or to you. Yeah, so I'm eligible to all three. I promised my family I would not serve as chair for this. Right. Well, this is life, right? So yeah, so I could serve as vice chair or secretary, be willing to do either if it's needed, but if somebody else wants to step up, they're more than welcome to.
Mr. Mayette?
You know what that was?
I believe I'm eligible for all three. I am more than willing to continue in this role. I don't feel comfortable stepping up to the other two roles at this time. I don't feel like I've got the time to devote that is necessary right now. Or fortunate.
I'm, I qualify for all three positions, and once again, by default, I'm willing to take on the chair again if the committee wants me to.
Is this where we nominate the three of you to
No.
continue?
No.
For my little grid, are you willing to be vice chair and secretary too, just so that when I hand it over to you, it is complete?
Well, I'm hoping I don't have to be all three. I just do not want to be all three. Okay. Okay, moving on to the superintendent's report. Superintendent Forget is going to go through his report very quickly for this month.
Okay, so I already talked about instrumental donation. Happy to report to you, I think I shared this with you via email, that we will be taking back over the NES Kids Club. Again, a big thank you to the Y for stepping in this year when we weren't able to run a program. I know it was not ideal. It was more expensive. I know there was some concerns. It was a rough start. But I was appreciative that we had something for the families that needed it most. But I'm thrilled that we actually will have Mary back and be running the program again so that we can say we have Kids Club operating at all 3 schools consistently next year. 8th grade trip, when I wrote this on Friday, or finished it on Friday, the students were not back. They did get back. They got back about 11:45 p.m. on Friday. It was a great trip. Of course, there were always glitches when you're traveling with a big group of 8th graders, but there were no major glitches. Everyone came back safe and sound. Everyone left together and came back together, if you know what I mean. No one came home early, so it was a good trip.
You had no extra students.
There was no extras. We didn't gather any. We didn't lose any, and no one got sent home early. So it was a great trip. I had sent you a picture of the whole crew sitting on the steps of the Capitol. Wow, it's not even 9. So a great trip, and I'm so glad they brought that back. This is the third year now that they've gone again. It had been many years since they traveled, and so I'm glad that trip happened. It's a great trip for the 8th grade students. Budget drop-in sessions. This is now all 3 have happened. We had a total of 1 individual show up today. And there was no one in the first 2. The person had a great conversation, but mostly came to listen. And so obviously there wasn't a whole lot of conversation other than us talking. Again, I think we still do these every year. We give the opportunity. We post them on the calendar. It's Zoom. It's easy for people to jump in. And obviously I think if there are years where there are more controversial, potentially, decisions made, we might see more people, but it was very unattended, underattended this year. I did want to give a note just about the overall impact. Obviously, there are a larger number of positions that were being removed from the budget. A lot of that is right sizing. I said 1 or 2. It's actually 2 or 3. So at this point, it looks like there will be, obviously, the district, our data specialist, and then definitively 1, likely 2 from the high school. That would be actual layoffs, if you will. There are other decisions made in any given year. Folks resign. There are teachers that are non-renewed at the end of their first, second, or third year. But there will be 2 or 3 that are people that were being let go specifically due to these budgetary impacts. I won't go through all of this, but just tremendous work being done at the high school. Karen Cassidy, who is the career guidance counselor, we added, this is her 2nd complete year, right? I believe this is 2nd year. We added it in the fiscal 23 budget, right? So started in, yes. So she started in September of 22. And just a little update here on some of the things going on. Career Week was awesome. This room was alive the entire week. There was roundtables with colleges, prep schools, trade schools. There was career days. We had the Salisbury Police Department sitting over there one day. You name it, everything from Portsmouth Naval Yard to doctor's offices to public service. The amount of the breadth of programming that came in. It was focused, I would say, primarily. The primary focus was on sophomores, but juniors and other class members were also involved throughout the course of the week. There were also some great field trips. It's Applied Materials, I believe that's the name of the company, where they I didn't put the name in here. Yeah, it is Applied Materials, yes, of Gloucester. Just some incredible advanced technology and manufacturing where students get to see the world they're going into. And then the MyCap, I went over the first bullet there. The MyCap, again, is the program that's the My Career and Academic Plan. So for every sophomore, they're participating in this program. They're doing a project. They're developing websites about their career path and intentions. Obviously, Matt said earlier, when he said it, it caught my attention that the difference in working with sophomores and where they are from a wellness perspective, seeing other high school teachers nodding vigorously, where sophomores are to where seniors are is a world of difference in those 2 years. So certainly they're not picking a career in sophomore year, but the exposure that they're getting is going to help these students make better career decisions as they move forward. And then just senior internships. There are 18 confirmed as of this writing. It might be 20 now. As of Friday, there were 18 confirmed. We have students everywhere. We have students working in, I know there's one working at Salisbury Town Hall. We've got to work in the elementary schools and in various companies across the area. So great program, hoping to continue to develop and expand that over the course of the coming years. Portrait of the Learner, I think I gave you a quick update here on the work when we were talking about the survey, so I won't repeat that. Public health guidelines as far as COVID, Mass Public Health, Mass DPH has now adopted the national CDC's recommendations. In summary, treat COVID what's the other big one we keep talking about, SARS or any of these other respiratory viruses, just like we would influenza. So the nurses operate in their offices as a medical facility. So if a nurse gets COVID, the nurse has to stay out the 5 days and has to mask for the 5 days when they return. For anyone else, it's just like we've been doing for the flu for years, 24 hours post symptoms improving, 24 hours fever-free without medication, and then it's a recommendation that masks are worn. It's not a requirement. So unless you all decide that you want to set policy differently, my recommendation is that we follow those guidelines, and that becomes the new norm, which is quickly becoming the new norm everywhere. So I chose to report that rather than putting that as an action item. So unless you choose to take that as an action item, this is a notice just to let you know that that's how we're going to operate. Certainly happy to answer any questions if you have them.
I just have one, which is, do we have concerns from student or staff members who may be at an increased risk for severe disease, and how protections might be put in place for a student that we know was COVID positive and is coming back unmasked, given that the recommendation is to avoid spending time with those individuals?
So I would say to you, everything, the way this is written, this is all recommendations. So unless you as a committee set different standards and policies, we have no ability to enforce that. We can ask, right? And so we will absolutely, right, if we know, we will absolutely do our best and encourage and recommend, but if there's a refusal, there's nothing we can do without policy. Good question.
Anybody else have any questions for Brian? Can I have a motion to receive and file the monthly personnel report for April 2024?
Make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The next item is the approval of CREST capital plan. I'm going to turn this over to the superintendent, a designated member of the CREST board.
So I will not go through this in detail. Hope you've had a chance just to look through this. There's two things here. It's of the North Shore is 20 members, and I believe CREST is 14 members. Are we 16 now? The capital plan, as written here, needs to be approved. Again, it's similar to a regional school district where 2/3 of the member communities need to approve this. The second is a more important one, is increasing the limit of the capital stabilization to $2 million. There is no request in this proposal to fund that. Actually, there's some projects, and if you look through the detail, the most pressing issues, they've been working on perimeter, repaving, concrete. There's 2 rooftop units that you remember that discussion about North Shore Consortium. It's not turning into that by any stretch, but what was expected to be about $350 per unit is turning into about $850 per unit. There is money. Think of it as our excess and deficiency is called surplus. At the end of year from an auditor, it's the cash surplus, and so there is excess surplus available. Anything over 25%, similar to anything over 5% for RE&D, it has to be used and spent down. They're not over the 25%, but the recommendation at the next board meeting will be to move that money out of surplus into stabilization in order to be able to do those projects because they're necessary. So again, this doesn't change tuition rates. This doesn't change. There's no capital assessment on the horizon like we dealt with for North Shore. This is just the proposal, the capital plan as presented, without a funding request, and then a request to increase the limit in the stabilization to $2 million so that that money can be moved out of surplus and into stabilization. And then, similar to what we're trying to do, is start to slowly fund that at a higher level through the operating budget with slow increments that don't hit assessments or tuition rates.
Does anybody have any questions on that? Can I have a motion to approve CRES's updated capital plan as presented in the increase of the capital fund limit from $650,000 to $2 million as requested?
Make the motion.
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The next item is the superintendent's contract. I am often grateful to have a superintendent who gives our district careful consideration in everything he does. In this case, he asked to put an item on the agenda to request a change to the COLA in his contract.
So before I do that, there was one sticky note that I forgot to mention on the personnel report that was part of my report. There was a new cafeteria manager for Newbury, Brian Strangman. That is not happening. So before that process completed, that was a hopeful, we were feeling good on Friday. As of today, that is not the case. So he has declined the position. So for this item, kind of a weird item, to be perfectly frank, my contract says that my salary will be increased at the same rate as the general cost of living adjustment that everyone within the district is getting. I could take less. However, my salary is supposed to be approved by you, so I'm requesting, I believe a 2.5% is fair for me. Obviously, with a higher salary, 2.5% is still in the ballpark of 3% for other people. So that is my request. There's nothing loaded behind it, just other than I think it's important that because you're supposed to set my salary, because it's differing from my contract, I think it's important that you just are okay with that and formally approve that.
I appreciate that, Brian. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the salary increase for the superintendent for FY25 as presented?
Make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I want to say that's a very nice symbolic gesture to the staff.
All those in favor? The next item is the subcommittee reports.
I was a no on that.
That's a no.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, Narissa's in the way there, so I don't see you.
So I should say, like, this was not done under duress. No one proposed this. This was fully my idea in a request. Just to make sure that's clear. I appreciate that, Matt, and I'm not saying that because of what you said, but just to make sure that that's clear, because this is it's kind of a weird request.
You wouldn't be in the way if you were in her chair.
Wow. And I just want everyone to know that Brian reached out to me, and we said the same thing as you, but we appreciate what he is doing. And as I say, I'm often grateful for the superintendent that we have. Okay. Policy.
So I'm thankful for the committee. I know I made some not nice comments about potential other school committees and how they operate. So I appreciate the measured approach you take to your roles as school committee members.
I'd just like to point out that sometimes you make some not nice comments about us too. So there is that, yes.
I would like to retract nothing.
Kidding.
Okay, policy and advocacy, Paul Goldner.
We met today. We finished our review of policy section, manual section B. That will be coming to the full committee next month. We reviewed policies manual section C today as well, although that will likely be coming back to us in May for just final before it comes here in June. We sent out a few weeks ago our first news from the school committee as part of the district digest. We're continuing on working on that and refining that before we eventually start sending that out as an individual document to go to the wider community. But that is continued work in progress, and we are also drafting a letter to our legislators and hoping to get something out to them in time for the votes on the House Ways and Means budget for the upcoming fiscal year, advocating for more money for us. So that's what we're up to, and our next meeting is next month on May 15th.
Finance, Paul Mayette.
So the finances remain tight. We continue to be in the spending freeze, and as we go through the purchase orders coming in for the rest of the year, as of the last meeting, we had identified a deficit that is being worked through that will, I believe, that will not require E&D at this time, but is still going to have to require some moving around of funds to make that work through. We'll still be looking to use stabilization money to make repairs, most significantly the chemical tank that broke here at the high school, and substitute line item continues to be difficult. The good news where it is that we were not required to unenroll anyone from the preschool as of the last meeting. That's still the case. And revolving accounts seem to be in generally better standing.
Personnel negotiations, Susanna.
So we don't have any meetings at the moment. We expect to have some, though, around the cafeteria workers negotiations. I think you'll update us with what's going on there. So, yeah, right as of now, we don't have any meetings for that to discuss. And I think, Matt, you might have a new role.
So facilities subcommittee, Matthew.
Too busy. So we met on the 15th. We discussed our purpose, and we're setting up site visits. And our next meeting is on May 3rd, and we're going to discuss the next steps and highest priorities.
And I forgot to add, our next meeting is only 25th moved because of vacation.
Linda, can I just remind, I don't think there's anything you need to do, but just to remind, we ended the March meeting really weirdly, remember, after the budget vote. We kind of closed and we're like, hey, we never did the subcommittee reports. I just looked back. There's nothing in there, but you didn't do subcommittee reports last month. So just as long as there was nothing, I don't think there's anything that has to happen, just to remind you of that.
Thank you for
Everyone wanted out of here.
Thank you for pointing that out.
It's my job. I didn't point it out.
The next item is executive session. At the time of the agenda posting, we anticipated needing an executive session tonight to discuss union contract negotiations, but this negotiation is still in process, and we need to defer this executive session until a later date.
The goal would be to have, what would the goal be? The goal would be to have this at my guess is probably not before the June meeting would be the target. And so they would now need to be with the reconstituted PNN. If that gets established, does that get established in May, or the subcommittees get established in June? Okay. So maybe it's one of those things where then it just comes straight to this committee executive session. I don't think it's going to be entirely different, but we'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
You could do a temporary appointment if you need to move things forward quicker. We need to make sure that goes on the agenda. to happen at the May meet. Like, I don't think there's any reason, in the past, we've always just said, we're going to reset it next month. And generally, there hasn't been a lot going on, but I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't immediately put the person who's running for Susanna's seat in her spot on PNN so that PNN can be fully functional.
I was going to say, I can also serve on that committee for this purpose if necessary in May and June.
Yeah, I think we have options. We just need, the full committee needs to do something for that month to set somebody formally in that spot, regardless, whoever it is, great. I think the full committee needs to put somebody there, though.
I think that would make sense to do an interim if it remained 2 of the 3 and then Paul jumped on or someone came out of retirement. I was subcommittee retirement, not Susanna, like full committee retirement, but just for that 1 month until we appoint them, just so we can wrap that up.
So do we reorganize in May or in June, the subcommittees?
Usually June.
So this would be just like for the month of May to finish up AFSCME.
But you want us to tell you between now and May, or between
Why
May
are you
and June?
changing in June that you want to be on the negotiation team? Okay.
Yeah, I failed miserably on the finance subcommittee. I just have. People haven't been paid for months. It's not my thing. I'm sorry. Truth be told.
That sounds good,
Committee
Paul.
is so much fun.
Wow.
I was just going to clarify that. Just for clarification, the officer reorganization is May. The subcommittee reorganization is June.
Yes.
So there's 2 reorganizations, which is why I think it's confusing.
But Paul, we're ready to have you step right in there.
I'll switch with you.
No, Paul's gonna, if you have to step. Okay. We're sorry to see you go, Susanna, and I appreciate all that you've done, stepping into that role as the chair when someone needed to take a break, and you did it with a big smile on your face. I appreciate that. Like Brian said, we have, I'm often grateful for the committee we have, that we're like a family, and each and every one at this table, we care about the students of this district and our own communities. So I appreciate everything that everybody does. I don't know if you want to say anything?
Just that it's been an incredibly humbling 3 years. I'm very privileged to serve with all of you. I think it's a lot of work, and if only anybody knew how much work goes into it behind the scenes. I don't need to give you reasons as to why I'm leaving, but I do. I have a very busy work life now with a major new project and kids all over the show, so it's time to kind of reset. But I fully, any support that I can provide within the purview of not being I certainly will. It really has been an experience, and I really welcome the new member coming through. It will be, wish them all the luck, and best wishes to them.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So I want to end on a light note before we get to the motion. So when I was a senior in Ipswich High School, I was a 3-sport athlete all 4 years, and my mother received a letter like a month before I was going to graduate, and it was from the principal, and it said, if your son doesn't start going to physical education class, his graduation is not going to happen. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second, and I had to write reports my senior year because I tore my ACL, so 4 quarters worth of reports.
This is great. Everyone on your vote, I need a senior story.
Well,
I so believe that.
I don't think anybody, seniors can be worse than the seniors of 2020. COVID.
The seniors themselves or the experience they had?
The experience they had.
I was like, wow, they seem like pretty good kids, but that's cool.
No, I just meant from their experiences. Wow. Nice. No, not yet. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Have a nice night.